I really didn't want to come back. I mean, it was just, it's like when I don't even know how to explain it. It's the most profound, incredible thing I could have ever experienced. So when I did end up coming back into my body, I remember before I entered back into my physical body, I remember standing, like sitting above, hovering above, and looking at my mom. This is where I get emotional. Looking at my mom with my daughter on her lap. And she kept praying, God, please don't take my daughter. Please don't take her mother. And it really made me want to jump back into my physical body because I realized I need to finish this job.
Welcome to the Spiritual Sensitivity Unleashed podcast, the empowering sanctuary for empaths and highly sensitive people. I'm your host, Emily Kady. My mission is to support and uplift those feeling overwhelmed by the weight of others' expectations. Each episode, we explore the mystical realms, connecting with the universe, spirit guides, and angels to uncover your authentic truth and purpose. Join me for heartfelt conversations, expert insights, and practical tools to help you thrive as an empath. Today, I am so excited to introduce my dear friend and special guest, Lisa Rogers, an international psychic medium renowned for her spiritual wisdom. Since the age of 2, Lisa has been communicating with the spirit world. She has worked with ascended masters, spirit guides, archangels, and intergalactic beings, blending her channeling abilities and messages with her Reiki healing for unique and enriching experience. Lisa is committed to guiding and supporting others on their spiritual journey, nurturing their mind, body, and soul. Lisa, I am so honored and excited to have you with me today.
Well, I'm extremely honored and excited. I can't wait to share my experiences with you and kind of co-collaborate with all of the things because I know we both have kind of intermingled some of these spiritual experiences together.
We really have. It's amazing. I think it's just, soul sisters. We've had some very similar. I want to say you've had
Yes.
3 NDEs.
Yes, that is correct.
As well as I have. So, Lisa, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about your upbringing and your family. Were you guys spiritual people, religious people? What were you? What family were you born into?
Well, so if I'm starting from the beginning, I truly had a very different experience than some. I had a mother who was very religious, had Christian roots, and my dad, who was born probably, I would say, on the other side of the tracks. He was in a gang growing up, so I had a lot of dark and a lot of light, right?
Oh, that's
It's,
amazing.
yeah, it was. Looking back at it now at the age that I'm at, I'm really going, wow, that was coming full circle, right?
Because your family's from Chicago, is that correct?
Yes,
So the
yes.
other side of the tracks in a gang was
Literally from the other side of the tracks.
right.
Yes. Um, so of course, that brought its own lessons with it. My dad was raised, my grandfather was an alcoholic. He was an alcoholic, he no longer is, but you know what that brings, right? So I was born very much in the Christian belief, which brought another set of issues being a spiritual person, right? I was told I had a great imagination. I wasn't really allowed to talk about those things. But I guess I should back up just a second. I was born into a family of 5. I had 2 sisters, one younger and one, I guess she was 14 months older than me. So we were pretty close in age, but my younger sister was 4 years younger than me. And I was born premature. And I don't know if people really understand the call, but I was born in the call. And I didn't really understand what that meant until I got much older and started investigating because I had gone, as I was going on my spiritual journey, I had visited a few psychic mediums and they kept saying, I see this veil around you. Were you born in the call? And then I asked my mom and she said, well, because you were premature, I only got to glimpse you for a second because they didn't get it, like they didn't hand you to me,
Right.
back then. That would have been what I was born in 67. So births were way different, right? So I then realized that, yes, I was indeed born in the caul,
I don't
which
know what
in
that means. Can you explain that?
oh, sure. That is a thin membrane that is inside like the amniotic fluid, and it doesn't break open, like it doesn't, you're surrounded in it. It's like a bubble almost. Um, and in certain, I'm not even sure where they decided this, but they say that it can be a very spiritual thing, and only one in, I think, 80,000 babies are born this way with that thin membrane. And then, of course, the doctor has to remove it, or the midwife, or whatever, right? So certain cultures will say that that is a very profound thing, and that most babies that are born in the caul have a spiritual calling, right? I think these days, I actually looked it up just to make sure that I was saying it right. Some people call it born in the veil. Some people now say that it's mermaid birth, which I had never heard of before. So yeah, I guess you could reference it as that.
Wow.
Um, but some spiritual cultures will also say that the child is born to be a healer
Mhm.
in the future, which I found really interesting, because for me, when I started looking at that and realizing that I could connect to that, it was like, I felt that I was born to be a healer from right out of the gates, because for one, I felt different, which I think a lot of people that are born and they stay wide open, because we all have gifts, but mine stayed open. Um, I feel like I just wanted to go home. I felt like I was born in the wrong family. As much as I love
Wow.
my mom and my sisters and my dad, I just felt strange. Like I was very awkward, if you will. My hands would heat up, they would vibrate, they would tingle. Lights would go on and off when I'd walk by street lights, light bulbs would blow up, like just go poof over my head. And I thought, okay, is there something wrong with me? I mean, like I really did. I thought this is strange, right? As I'm sure you can relate to. I mean, most of us that have gifts early on that are open, we feel like, is there something wrong with us? Unless you're born in a family that's very spiritual and metaphysical, right?
Exactly. That understands it.
Yes.
Mhm.
So that was kind of my journey going into the world, right? Seeing spirit, feeling spirit, smelling spirit, experiencing everything around me, overwhelmed all the time. I was dyslexic, but did not like school at all, because when I got to school as a kindergartner, I walked in the door and I'm one of 30 classmates, and I'm looking around the room and I'm seeing everybody's deceased loved ones and animals.
Oh
Well,
man.
I couldn't even concentrate. And
Oh,
when I would try to explain that to somebody, it was always, oh, you've got a really good imagination. We don't talk about that, right? So I guess I signed up for a real challenge this lifetime.
it's interesting. They often say old souls have, a difficult beginning. We
Yeah,
have a lot of trauma and we have different gifts that we
yeah,
bring in because we want to fully express them and experience
yeah,
it.
yeah,
And sounds
yeah.
like you were ready right out the gate to fully
Yeah.
express
Yeah,
it.
yeah. If I would have just been able to step into it fully, but I guess I was just a very shy, awkward child. Like, you know what I mean? I was always trying to find myself and understand who I was, and I just couldn't do that. And I feel that the NDEs, the near-death experiences, was kind of spirit's way of saying, come on, you can do this. You know what I
Right.
mean?
So I want to go back really quickly and just touch on something that you talked about. You said you were dyslexic.
Yes.
Um, I had a learning disability. I was not dyslexic, but I did
Okay.
have a learning disability as a child. And I'm curious, what is your thoughts of very highly spiritual people actually having learning challenges or disabilities?
I guess I've never really thought about it that much. So right off the cuff, thinking about that, um, I feel like we're very distracted because we stay a lot up here in our head.
Right, I agree.
Like if you do healing work, if anyone's listening that does healing work and we talk about the chakras, you have your upper chakras and then you have your lower chakras. And, your lower chakras are more earth, you're grounded to the earth, right? Otherwise, you're dizzy and running into walls, which a lot of us that are spiritual do that anyway, right? Because it's hard for us to stay grounded. So we wear a lot of beads and do these things, these little rituals that we do to try to keep ourselves in this body, right?
Right.
So I would say that for me personally, and I've worked with children that I don't know the proper term, so excuse me if I get it wrong, whether they have autism or Down syndrome. I work with a lot of children that have disabilities of some sort. I don't consider them disabilities, but other people do.
Hmm.
I had a nephew that was severely brain damaged and he died at age 11. So I worked with a lot of children that were very sensitive in that way. But I always felt, even with like when I work with children with autism or Down syndrome, they're so special. They are
Yeah.
so flippin' unique. Like
They're the
their
salt of
heart
the
is
earth.
so, yeah, their hearts are so open. And I think
Right.
they're so highly intelligent and
Hmm.
so living up here in the spiritual realm that we just don't understand them
We don't.
because we're the ones that are more in our earthly body.
Exactly.
Does
Yeah,
that make
yes,
sense?
absolutely. I do readings for people that are on the spectrum, and I'm always getting that message. Like they have such a powerful gift, and they are here for a
Yes.
purpose. Because back in like the 60s and 70s, it was I want to say it was like 1 in 10,000 babies. I don't know. Don't quote me for that actual number, but actually, it was born on the spectrum
Okay.
or was considered autistic. Um,
Yes.
Now it's like less than 1 in 100. It's like 100 or excuse me, 1 in every 43 or something like that.
Wow.
And they're here from that, from my understanding and the readings I've done with people on the spectrum, these individuals are coming in to really help us with the shift that we're currently going through.
Yes.
Because we
Yes, and
need
I would agree with that. I really feel that it's, how you have to have this polarity of, light and dark and
yeah,
the souls. I mean, I feel that we're all gifted. We all come from source,
I
whatever source
agree.
you need that to be, right?
Mhm.
Whether you're born from the stardust or the Big Bang Theory or God or Christ consciousness, whatever you want to call it.
Yes,
Is all I always say, as long as it's from love and light, that's all that matters.
I agree.
But yeah, we each have that beautiful piece of the puzzle, and we're all here collecting the information that we need to go back to source. Because when we come into this world, we come from pure. When we leave this world, we go back to pure. We're never really, energy doesn't die, right?
That's so beautiful. Well
So
said.
yeah, it's really, I guess that would be my answer about having learning what they consider to be learning disabilities. I just feel like it's not really a disability.
Yeah,
It's
I don't, and it was just always tagged or labeled that
yes,
as
yes,
I had a learning disability. But I've always been kind of curious because I know that a lot of the people that I've interviewed or talked to, my friends, they all seem to have had little neurodivergence growing
yes,
up. Things have not been really easy for them learning wise, and yeah, and I love how you also said because we're up in our upper chakras we're not in our physical
yeah.
body. Like I have had to work so hard to get into my physical body.
It is hard, and it's hard to stay there because
Oh yeah.
it's like we know there's so much more. So it's like we just want to just go bloop right back. It's like,
Yeah,
nope, I
it
want to
feels
be over here, not
I
down
know,
here.
right? It feels so good,
It
right?
feels so good. You don't want to, yeah, I don't want to be in here.
Right. So share with us a little bit about your most like transformative near-death experience. What sort of lessons you had learned or experienced in it? I would love to know more about that.
Okay, well, okay, so my very first one was total teenager. Um, I was a very awkward, shy child and never felt comfortable with myself, right? And felt totally misunderstood, didn't have a lot of friends. And here I had my older sister who was not, she was only a grade older than me. She was Miss Popular. All the boys loved her. She was always going out. She had tons of friends. And of course, I'm looking at her thinking, why can't I be that? But I'm this weird, shy, awkward thing, that doesn't even speak to people. So she decided to take me to a party, a drinking party. And
And
of
how
course,
old are you at this point?
I'm 14.
Okay.
Yeah. And she was dating an older boy. And now we have moved from Chicago to Wisconsin. And if anyone knows about the Midwest, I'm out in the middle of nowhere. Like there's not even a mall near me, right? So we drove about an hour to go to this house party. And of course, my mom had no idea. Had she known, that wouldn't have been happening. But anyway, so we go, and of course, she sets me down at the kitchen table. Now, all these people are older than me. Most of them are in their 20s because they can buy alcohol, right? And she decides to give me this, what is called a screwdriver, which is an alcoholic beverage with orange juice and vodka, if you no one knows. And I don't think I've ever drank, maybe had a couple sips of beer, like snuck some from my dad once in a while just for fun, just to see. And being very sensitive, right? Because when you are wide open gifted, you're extremely sensitive to food, fragrance. I mean, you name it, you're sensitive, right? Well, I'm drinking it and I'm falling asleep at the kitchen table. And she's looking over at me going, oh man, here's my third wheel that I'm trying to, wants to be cool. And she's falling asleep at the table at 10 o'clock. So she, said, come on, and put me in the living room in the chair. Now, this is probably 1979, 1980. So still shag carpet, white shag carpet all
no.
around me.
Oh
Okay.
no.
You know where this is
I
going.
do. Not a good picture in my mind.
Not a good thing. So basically what ended up happening was I started profusely throwing up, not realizing that I was throwing up. And she comes out to check on me, and there is blood from one end of the living room to the other, including all over me. And she thought I was dead. And I'm gone. I'm out of my body. I'm gone. And I have no idea what just happened. All I can do is I'm up in the air, I'm out of my body, and I
Are you
feel
looking down to see what's
yes.
going on? So
And
you actually
I
have an out of
yeah.
body experience in this moment.
So at this point, I'm thinking, this is the most alive I've ever felt in this body, but I'm
Right.
not in my body. So in my mind, I'm like, did somebody slip something in this drink? Because I mean, you have to know I'd only had like maybe one drink. I hadn't even had that much to drink. So I'm sure she's scratching her head going, I just killed my sister so that she could be cool with me. And now look at her, you know?
Right.
So, and I mean, I'm sure it looked like a crime scene because this is a white shag carpet and I'm wearing a white shirt and there's blood everywhere. I mean, it was just the craziest thing. So right away, she's trying to wake me up and she's like, I can't find a pulse. Like I see her, but I'm having so much fun being free. I'm not thinking about the fact that she's panicking down here. So
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
out of the house. I'm flying around the neighborhood.
Really? Wow.
And I don't remember ever having quite that experience before. I saw a lot of things, experienced a lot of things, but not that.
Right.
That was my very first one. And then of course,
So what brought you back into your body?
so I heard a voice say, you need to go back to your body. And it was it was a male voice, but it was peaceful, comforting, but kind of assertive, like you need to go back.
I know
So
you love it here, but it's time.
exactly. So that was it. Boom, back in I went. And of course, by the time I hit my body, she was holding me up in a shower, trying to get the blood off of me.
Oh man.
And I was finally like, the water was hitting me in the face and I was like gasping for air.
Your
And
poor sister.
oh my gosh, the poor thing.
Yeah.
She never took me to another party after that.
I don't
You're
blame
on your
her.
own. You're on your own.
Right?
So that was, I mean, I think I was too young to really understand what exactly that all meant, except for when they took me to the movie theater after that because they didn't want to bring me home till they knew I was okay, right? So when I woke up the next day, like at 10 o'clock in the morning, she came in my bedroom and said, are you okay? And I felt awful. I mean, I just felt awful. And I kept thinking to myself, yeah, I'm fine. But in my head, I thought, now I really want to go home. Like it made me long something that I had been longing the whole time I was existing, but even more so because I realized there's more to this, but I don't know how to find it. Right.
Right.
Like I kept praying about it, but it was like, I just don't understand what this means.
I had the same experience.
Yeah, isn't that
Just,
crazy?
yeah,
But
it's
it's like you can't tell someone that your whole body is vibrating, like every cell is so alive and so it's like a phenomenon, It's just at 14, I was like, how do they're going to put me in therapy or put me in the hospital. I'm like, I can't explain this.
no.
So I just stopped. I didn't talk about it at
Yeah,
all.
I understand.
So, of course, then as I grew older, I kind of just pulled all my gifts back and I just kept trying to shut them out because I couldn't talk to anybody about it, right? And then I kind of, with my religious upbringing, I was thinking, well, maybe this is bad. Maybe this is a bad thing and I shouldn't I shouldn't be talking about this at all. And of course, every time I was sick all the time. I don't know if you experienced that, but I was always getting ear infections or, I was always having something wrong with me, or I was allergic to penicillin, or I was allergic to this food,
Yeah,
or
I can't take any medications.
yeah,
Yeah.
me either.
I
So
my
it
I
was
my two of my NDEs were caused by medications.
perfect. Yep. That
So there's just
totally
our
understand that
sensitive
because that's
sensitive
followed
system.
me through my whole life.
Yeah.
Um, so now I'll fast forward. I get married. I have 2 children, and my husband did not agree with, like, he didn't want me talking about spiritual gifts. I mean, he did believe like in ghosts and stuff. He thought that was kind of cool, but we didn't talk about it. Like, we just did not talk about that stuff. And I think he knew that I kind of talked about it a little bit, but I didn't want him to think I was weird, right? So anyway, I had my son, and after I had him, he was about 2. I had gotten really sick and I went to the urgent care twice that summer thinking, oh, I don't know what's wrong with me. They're like, oh, you have the flu, go home. Oh, you have the flu, go home. And after the second time, um, I thought, I just don't feel right. I had these just horrible migraines and just nauseous. And so I started going to the chiropractor for the first time because I didn't know how else to fix myself. And our daughter was in school and our son was 2, as I said. And I went to the chiropractor that day. He worked on me for over an hour. I said, okay, I think I feel a little better. I leave. Of course, being a mom, I got to go to the grocery store. So I'm hunched over the grocery cart, getting a few groceries. I make it home and I have him in one arm and one bag of groceries. And I hit the living room floor. I
Oh
could
man.
not, I was like, that's it, I'm done. And I came to, and then I crawled to the phone, which at that time we didn't have cell phones, right?
Right.
So I crawled to the phone and I dialed my mom at work and I said, I think I'm dying. And she goes, what? Where are you? And I said, I'm at home. I said, Chaz is crawling around. The groceries are all over the floor. I can't move. And she goes, I'm sending both your sisters.
Oh, Lisa,
And
that's
then I passed out again.
awful.
I was out.
Thank God you
So
had enough to call your mom.
right. So it was one of those things where the next thing I know, my older sister, my younger sister were there. And my older sister took me to the hospital, and my younger sister stayed there for my daughter to get off the bus. And when we got to the hospital, I said to her, I got out of the car and I walked into urgent care or into the emergency room. And all I remember was laying on that table and the doctor saying, we're going to do a spinal tap because we don't really understand what's going on. And that's the last thing I remember. I woke up, I think 9 days later. I was considered dead. They pronounced me dead, clinically dead. And then I don't know if it was my sister or one of the nurses said, well, she walked in here. And they said, she walked in here? And they said, yeah, she walked in here. And they said, well, we've got to try and save her then. So they started doing their things, and then I was in a coma for 9 days. And they didn't know if I would wake up.
Oh my
And
goodness.
that was when I had my big experience of the near-death experience. And it was so, I'm going to get emotional because it was so beautiful. It was like, I don't even know how to explain it to people. It's like when I left my body, I wasn't thinking about anything. Like I didn't see anything in the hospital. I didn't see my body attached to all these tubes and all these things. Um, I instantly saw the light. I went to the light, off I went, right? And when they say, if you are a Christian, you understand that your Father has many rooms. That's an understatement. It was, I went to so many different places. And the fact that they let me do that and come back into a physical body was pretty, like, it was really profound for me. But while I was there, I remember at one point I felt like I was in this huge chapel of like with this beautiful architecture and these columns, and the room was really dark, but I could hear this angelic voice singing in the background, and not like anything you could hear here. It was like all of your senses are on, you know, I don't even know how to say, like they're not even quadrupled. They are just, it's just, there's no way to describe it.
Amplified.
Yeah, they're amplified by a million times a million. But anyway, I remember standing in that cathedral, and the lights were down and there was just a light glow. And it was just an all-encompassing feeling. And I thought, where am I and what am I doing here? And they're like, well, we don't need to give you a life review right now because you're probably going to go back. And I said, okay, I thought, okay. So off I went into another room and then another room. And it was just like, I just kept going.
Wow.
And at one point I remember seeing this beautiful field, and there were children playing, and they were so happy and there was so much love. And then I walked over to another, when I say walked, I didn't walk, I floated.
Yeah, you float,
Like,
right?
here I am. And then there was like these other souls that were, the only way I could describe it is if you've ever seen Twilight, when I can't remember his name, but he's laying in the field and he's all sparkly.
I haven't seen it. So
I can't remember his name, but anyway, he's like one of the main characters in that movie. And I remember him laying there with her, and she's like, he's all like, his whole body is just like iridescent and sparkling. And I thought, oh my gosh, where am I? This is so, but all the souls were just kind of laid out, like they're not in their body, but it's like a silhouette of their body. And I said, well, where am I now? And they said, well, this is the transition for the souls who have gone through a lot of trauma. This is just the healing place. And I'm like, oh, so like for people that died like very traumatically, or suicide, or those type things, right?
Wow.
And then I moved on to another area, and it was just one like movie after another, but I was totally submersed in it. And I really didn't want to come back. I mean, it was just, it's like when I don't even know how to explain it. It's the most profound, incredible thing I could have ever experienced. So when I did end up coming back into my body, I remember before I entered back into my physical body, I remember standing, like sitting above, hovering above, and looking at my mom. This is where I get emotional. Looking at my mom with my daughter on her lap. And she kept praying, God, please don't take my daughter. Please don't take her mother. And it really made me want to jump back into my physical body, because I realized I need to finish this job. I need to do this. And obviously God, or whoever spoke to me on the other side, was telling me, we don't need to go through a review of life because you're going back, right? So boom, I was back in my body. And of course, being very disorientated when I came out of it, because then they had to take the tube out, and they had, take the morphine away and all the things. So when I finally came out of it and was coherent enough, there were 9 doctors standing around me, and I was their anomaly, right? They were like, we can't believe you even walked in here, blah, blah, blah. And it wasn't until probably 3 days after being home, and I went home on IV therapy for like a month. I had to administrate it myself twice a day. And I remember going home, and it was probably 3 or 4 days later. I remember calling my mom and crying and saying, I don't know what happened. And she goes, you don't remember anything? And I said, well, I remember being on the other side. And you know how they explain sometimes when people like have a near-death experience and they have a heart attack or something, and they almost like mourn, like they're very depressed and sad. That's how I felt. And
Coming
I realized
back,
now, that it was because it was being there is so alive, right? And then coming back here, it feels like you're in this heavy vessel with all this ego and these emotions, and being an empath, you're feeling all this around you, and it just feels like it's so overwhelmingly heavy, right?
It's so heavy here, so confining. And
Yes.
it's so
So
expansive in the spiritual realm.
yeah. So I think for
Mm.
me, it was just like, wow, I don't like the way I feel in this body. Ew. But yet
Well,
I want to be
especially because
here.
you're like, you have what, a PIC line, right? For
Yes.
your
Yes.
IV.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're getting back into your body and acclimating to
Right.
it, and that's hard.
Yes.
And
So
what
that
did you
one,
actually go through? What do you know what happened to you?
well, basically my heart stopped. It stopped. And then they had to jump start me, and then once they got me going, they were like, I was in a coma, but it was actually a good thing because I ended up with meningitis. So there was,
Wow.
fluid around is it the member? I don't remember how spinal, I'm not even sure how they say that, but yeah. So, I mean, that's basically, and the sad part is that my nephew who was 11, who had not passed yet, he actually died of meningitis. That was what finally took
Mhm.
him. But the reason he was disabled was because the hospital overdosed him when he was 8 months old, because he had to have like a simple surgery. So he ended up dying of meningitis after
Interesting.
I got it, which
Wow.
is weird.
Yeah,
It's
that's
it's like
really
this weird
weird.
connection. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Life is, it doesn't make sense how we have these different connections.
It
Like,
really doesn't.
how many people do you know
Yeah,
have had meningitis? I don't think I know
right.
anyone in here too, in
Yeah.
your family.
Yeah. And so of course that battle with the illness thing, it ended up a year later. I just never felt right after that. I just didn't feel like I just felt like I was missing time and like weird things were happening. And maybe it was from being over there for so long and then coming back. I don't
Hmm.
know.
I
Um,
had similar. I was not the
did
same.
you?
Yeah, my time, it was like in a time warp. And I'm so glad you said that because I didn't realize it. I always said things were slower for me. My
Yeah.
brain was slower, but it was like a time warp now that you say that.
Yeah. I felt like I was missing time too. Like things were lagging or not. Like,
Yeah.
where did that time go? And then all of a sudden, boom. I'm like, okay, what's wrong with me?
When
You
you say
know?
that, are you meaning like lost memories? Like all of a sudden, like maybe um years have passed that you weren't even aware of, or what?
No, it was like just in a matter of minutes.
Okay, yeah, that would
Um,
be mine too, would be
yeah,
like
it was just a
minutes.
real little like bloop, bloop, you know
Uh-huh.
what I mean?
Yeah, like
So
we're
I went
jumping
back.
timelines and there's
Yeah,
what would they call it? Like a blip in the matrix, a matrix or something.
Matrix. Yeah,
Yeah.
probably. That's probably
Mhm.
what they would call it now, right?
Yeah.
So I went back to the doctor, silly me. I mean, at the time, I really thought, oh, well, what the heck? So I went back to the doctor and I told her what was going on. And she said, well, she started looking through my chart and she goes, oh, and she had that look and she looked under her desk and she looked back up and she said, we missed something. And I looked at her, I said, you missed something? She goes, yeah, when you came in that day to the ER, they did a CAT scan and there's something in your CAT scan in your brain. And
Oh.
I looked at her and I said, what? And she goes, yeah, do you, where do you want to go? I mean, like she was like stuttering. And I said, what do you mean? Whoa, what do you mean? I'm like, I don't understand what you're saying to me right now. And she goes, um, we missed something. You have something in your brain. So do you want to go to another hospital? And I said, okay, can you explain to me what this is? And she goes, we don't know what it is. She said, obviously we'll do, we can do more things, but she said, you're going to need more tests. I said, okay. So I said, well, I'm close to Rochester, which is a world renowned Mayo Clinic that people come from all over the world. I'm about an hour and a half away. So I said, I want to go there and I want all of my charts, all of my scans to go to Madison, which is the university hospital where they're learning, right? So she sent my charts both places. I ended up in Rochester and they said, first they called, well, where I was called it a cystic lesion. They diagnosed me with seizures. I lost my license for a year. Then I went up to Mayo and started meeting with a neurologist. I was on seizure medication for 11 years
Oh man.
and they wanted to do brain surgery immediately. And I said no, because my gut was telling me no. Um, And then it ended up that they said, well, let's watch it. Let's just watch it every 3 to 6 months. You come back and get a scan and blood work. And, I went through, I think, 6 different seizure medications. Anyone that's been on seizure medication knows that it's not one and done. And as I was changing, I was having grand mal seizures because the medication was making. So it was not a fun ride at all. It was horrible. And every 3 months when I was going back, I was writing out a will to my children thinking, oh my God, now I'm going to leave them without a mother anyway. Right. So, and every time I went, it grew. Every time I went, oh, it's grown a little more. It's grown a little more. It's grown a little more. And did I have symptoms? Yeah, I did. I did have really bad migraines. My balance was off. When I would walk, I'd tip to the side. I had black spots in my vision. My whole face was numb in the middle of my face, all these things, right? But anyway, so it ended up that by the time my daughter was 15 and a half, I was my last time that I went to Mayo to meet with my doctor, and she said I needed to meet with a neurosurgeon and have that conversation because now they're going to have to do surgery. And I sat with him for about 3 hours, and he explained to me everything that they were going to do and that I needed to be awake while they were doing this so that they knew that they weren't hitting something that they shouldn't. And it just turned out to be a really long, scary thing. And when I saw the scan, this little thing that was tiny right here now grew fingers and was like up over my head.
Ooh.
So it was not like, it was bad. At this point, they were like, we got to get in there. And I looked at this neurosurgeon who was a very kind, beautiful soul of a man. And I sat in front of him and I said, okay, Dr. So-and-so, he had one of those names that was really hard to say. I think he was from India. And I reached forward and I said, if this was your mother, your daughter, your sister, your wife, and you were looking at their scans, what would you say to them from a doctor and a son or husband or brother point of view? And he reached forward and I swear God just like entered his body. He was so kind and compassionate. He reached forward and he grabbed my hands and he got really close to my face. And he said, if you were my daughter, my mother, and he repeated everything that I said. He said, I would tell you to go home and live your life to the fullest each and every day. And if you can live with these symptoms and you've been living with them this long, he said, you go home and you enjoy each day. Some people don't know. He said, you could have been born with this. He said, and some people die walking across the street tomorrow. Right. He said, go home and enjoy your life. He said, and just keep getting the scans, keep watching it. And Emily, I literally reached forward and I said to him, thank you for giving me my life back. And I remember tears rolling down my face. And I said, can I hug you? Is that appropriate? And I gave him a hug and I walked out of that office and I felt for the first time in my life, I could live again. I walked up to the desk and I looked at the lady that was taking the appointments and she said, so when are we scheduling your surgery? And I looked right at her and I said, we're not. And she goes, pardon me? And I said it again. And I said, you won't see me again. Thank you for everything. And I left.
Wow.
And from that moment on, I have not had another scan. I have not gone back. My headaches are completely gone. Well, I mean, I have headaches, but not like I did. My third NDE was probably about 14, maybe 13, 14 years ago. My dad had asked me and my older sister, because by this time now my younger sister had died and my nephew. So my younger sister died at age 30 and her son died at 11. And then now here I am, my dad says, if you and your sister want to go through this motorcycle class, I'll buy you both a motorcycle. And we're like, Dad's going to buy us something cool. I really didn't want a motorcycle, but he was willing to buy us a motorcycle.
He wanted something from it.
I was on board. I was like, yes, let's do this. So I did it and we both passed and I got my motorcycle and I was, I wanted to practice before I took my test with the Department of, anyway. So a friend of ours came up, him and his wife, and he was on the Village EMT or whatever. And he took me out riding. Well, he went ahead of me And what does Lisa do? She crashes her motorcycle.
Oh no.
Yeah. A rabbit, of all things, comes running out. Dumb me. Anyone that's listening to this is going, you don't swerve for a rabbit, right?
But when you're a sensitive soul, you do.
So I like swerve, and then I think, well, I'm just going to do what I'm supposed to do in class, right? Well, it didn't work.
Mm.
The motorcycle went this way, and Lisa went bouncing down the blacktop this
Oh,
way.
no.
So now here I am laying in the middle of the blacktop, and I'm up in the clouds, and I'm looking at myself going, I'm back in this freedom feeling again, right?
Right.
Really?
I'm so happy to be back here.
Sounds so silly to anybody listening to this, but it was just like, it just feels so good.
It feels
So I
so
start to
good.
feel myself like wanting to ascend, right? Like it's almost like a magnet. It's like this pull of a magnet that you can't stop.
Right. Oh, that's a
And
really
as
good way to say that.
it's
Yes.
just so strong, it's like you can't.
Yes. Exactly.
So I feel myself getting lighter and starting to go. And then I hear that calm voice again,
The
that
same voice.
saying, you need to go back.
Oh,
And I'm
man.
like, no.
Please don't.
And by this time I look at myself on the blacktop, and now he's over me, and he's checking my pulse. He's actually shaking me, and he's like, please. And I can hear him say, please, for the love of God, please come back. I cannot tell your parents they've lost another daughter. And he's crying. And all of a sudden my heart just was like, oh, and boom, back in I went. And as soon as I went back in, I was like, you know how like when you get the wind knocked out of you, that's
Yeah.
how it was. And
Wow.
I was like choking and sputtering and trying to get that back in me. And then all of a sudden blood started coming out of my mouth. So then he's like, you need to go to you need to go to the
Yeah.
hospital. But anyway, I was fine. I kind of dislocated my arm and stuff, but I was fine. I had a lot of road rash and stuff, gravel in my arms and stuff, but I had a helmet on. Otherwise, I don't think there would have been any saving me, right?
Right. Yeah, that's really sad.
But that being said, I always laugh. Well, it's not funny, but everyone has those things. I have the number 3. If God gives me something 3 times, whether it be for a client of mine or for myself,
Right.
he
It's
has spoken.
confirmation. Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
that's it, Lisa. There's no going back.
So
So
yeah,
that
you've
was
had
my
your 3
third.
times. So
Yep,
now
that was
you
my
have to
third.
finish out this lifetime.
Yes. So that's when I started to get serious. I was like, okay, what do I need to do? How do I need to do this? What is it that I'm not paying attention to? So that's when I started to buy the books, and I started going to other psychic mediums, and that I started going, okay, maybe I'll do a class for mediumship, gallery reading. Maybe I'll do a psychic class. That's when I started to really start to do my journey. And it wasn't until my divorce, and I think that's when I really went, okay, I kept sticking my toe out of the spiritual closet, but I could not like leap, right?
I'm curious because you just touched on something for me about dipping your toe out of the spiritual closet because being from a family, your mom was very religious. Your whole
Yeah.
life you were told we don't talk about that, what you're
Yes,
seeing. That must have been really difficult for you.
it was. Yes, it truly was. And I think that's why I couldn't embrace my spirituality, because I felt that she thought it was not from the light.
Right.
So as I was moving through that, I had to go very careful. Like I was trying to tread very slowly because I didn't want to upset my mom,
Mm-hmm.
because she was my everything, right?
Right.
So that's what made it really hard. But as I started to unfold and then spirit ended up taking my mom and my sister both home too. So it was one of those things that once everyone was gone, it was like, I'm not bound to a building. I'm not bound to a book. You know what I mean? I understand now that it's okay to have Christian roots and religious, your roots being in the religion, but I took the roof off, and now I've expanded, and my canopy of my tree is up in heaven in the spiritual realm. I've opened my crown, and now I'm of service. I've asked God, let me be of service. Let me be of love and light and help others that have had these experiences or that are afraid, right?
So I have so many questions for you. I may have to invite you back again.
Oh,
But
sorry.
no, I love it. But I want to, for sake of time and where we're at right now, I would love to just go into how you're right now a service for God. You are here to help people. Can you share with us a little bit about exactly what you do, and maybe you have a story that you could share of how you've impacted one of your clients' lives?
Gosh, there's so many. I'll pick the one that got me to really jump, like literally fling the door open, or at least think I could, right? I had a beautiful young lady that was, gosh, she was so overachieved. I mean, she spoke many languages. She was beautiful. She was Miss Jackson County. And her family was beautiful. And I did her mom and her sister and her hair. And she ended up dying very tragically. And when she passed, she came to me um, just out of the blue. I was out mowing lawn and she came to me and she said, please give this message to my parents and my sister. Um, I died very traumatically. She took her own life, and I want them to know that I'm okay. And I didn't want to give her that. I didn't want to give her family that message because I was going through my divorce. I was raising our son alone. Hair is what I do for the other part of my living. And I thought, if I give this message, are they going to shun me and think that, because they were a religious family? Um, but God spoke to me. He said, Lisa, how did you feel when your sister died and you couldn't get a message from her right away? Didn't you feel lost? And I said, yeah, I did. And he said, use that experience to propel you forward. This beautiful angel is coming from heaven to tell you, to tell her family that they're okay. So 2 pages of messages I got from her.
Oh,
And I called her mom and I said, is it okay if I come after you have her service? Can I come to your farm and speak to you and your family? So I spent the day there with them, giving them these messages, crying with them, holding their hand, honored that God could even use me in such a profound way that I didn't get the healing I needed at the time, but to be able to pay it forward for another family. So that was truly, I think for me, I always say I have so many angels. I'm so grateful and blessed to be able to do this work and to still be in this body, to finally
you're
be
meant
able
to be
to be a
here.
vessel to work, let God work through me, because that's all I am. I'm just tuning in.
Yes, to be able to give people some peace of mind when they've lost their loved one, and especially with evidential mediumship, which
Yes.
sounds like what you're able to do
Yeah.
with 2 pages of messages.
Yeah, it was truly, like I said, it was mind blowing for me, but it really made me realize that I needed to step into what I came here to do, even though I was afraid.
Right. Yeah, you had to have 3 NDEs to be able to
Yeah,
step
right. I'm a
into
little stubborn.
it. They're
I
like,
wasn't listening.
come on, girl, you can do it.
I make this joke that there's not an angel that was assigned to me up in heaven that has a feather left, so I'm going to spend eternity doing feather extensions when I arrive.
That is so great. I love that.
Nobody wants to be my mentor up there. So like, we're done with her.
Oh no, they love you so much.
Thank
They're so grateful for you. Lisa, can you share with the audience any message that you may have for them? Maybe there's one person out there that you're getting a message for.
I think really for me, what I would like to say to people is, please, if you question anything that you're having, please try to go within and get some insight, or get help that you need. For me, growing up in a family that I'm grateful that I'm a Christian. I'm grateful that I was baptized, all the things. But please know that you don't have to be a prisoner to that. And I shouldn't even use that word. Um, you keep yourself in this closed-in wall. There's so much more to know and to learn and to experience. And whether you believe in God or whether you believe in a higher power, it doesn't matter. There's so much more, and we are only using like this much of our brain. And it's just so important and imperative to open yourself up to so much more. And when you're a child, I feel like our imagination, we're wide open. We look at the world totally different. And then when we turn 2, 3, 4 years old, we start having all these rules and regulations. No, don't touch that. No, don't do that. No, do. And that's when all of a sudden all these seeds are planted that aren't even ours, and we're not truly living. We're not living our potential. So it's okay to have your beliefs. It's okay to believe in God. That's a wonderful, beautiful, grateful. I'm grateful for it. But please don't limit yourself to that. Because if you are and you're experiencing these synchronicities or these beautiful messages from spirit, if they're from love and light, they're going to feel good in here. If they're not, disregard those, because that's not from the light. But don't limit yourself, because that's not what we're here to do. And if you haven't seen that throughout the world now, I mean, it's time for us to all usher in and help each other and walk each other home into this new earth.
Beautifully said. With your 3 NDEs and experiencing that expansive energy, you know how limitless we are as souls, and each of us have that capability. Maybe we can't necessarily feel it here on Earth in this 3D realm, but we have access to it.
Yes, we most certainly do.
Yeah, absolutely. Lisa,
and thank you for your channel, because that's what you're trying to spread. That's what you're trying to get people to understand, is that we are so much more. And each one of you that are watching this are a beautiful, magnificent soul that has so much light to share. So don't dim it for anybody. Let your light shine.
Thank you, Lisa. If anyone wants to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you, whether they want to work with you or start to follow you on social media?
I do have a website. I'm on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, but my website is angel, ANGEL -inspired healing.com. But yeah, thank you so much. This
And
is
they
really
can all
fun.
access you through your website on social media too. Are there links?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
great. I will make sure to also add all the links in the description
Okay.
below as well. So thank you so much, Lisa, for your time.
Thank you.
Such a bright light.
Yes, thank you.
And for the audience, I just want to thank you, each and every single one of you, for joining us here today. I hope that this conversation was insightful for you and you enjoyed what Lisa had to share, which was chilling at moments, and so enlightening. So I thank you again, Lisa. I thank you, listeners, and may you each shine your light bright. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Spiritual Sensitivity Unleashed podcast. We hope our conversation today has inspired you to embrace your true self and connect with your inner strength. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review my podcast. Your support helps me reach more empaths and sensitive souls like you, empowering them to reclaim their inner peace and transform their sensitivity into their strength. Stay connected with me on social media and visit my website at EmilyKady, that's EmilyKady.com, for more resources, upcoming episodes, and to book your own intuitive channeling session with me. Remember, you are not alone in this journey. Together, we can navigate the path of authentic living and spiritual awakening. Until next time, stay empowered, stay connected, and keep shining your light.